sim racers from around the globe, honoring a revolutionary era of open-wheel racing. With a beast not easily tamed, roaring around legendary circuits at breakneck speed. When engineers and drivers push boundaries, sometimes too far. When heroes muscled roaring beasts wheel to wheel around the hallowed ground. A time when the only driver aids were his 2 feet, the perfect combination of man, machine, and speed. Experience the competition and the glory of early 80s IndyCar action. The Lionheart Retro Series presented by Next Level Racing starts now. After 2 races where the Lionheart Retro Series went to pastures new, today it returns to a familiar friend. There are some races that are bigger than championship, and that is no different than when you head to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Today, glory is on the line, as well as double points as the Lionheart Retro Series gets set for its second Triple Crown race of 2022. Welcome to Indianapolis, and welcome to the 6th annual ButtKicker Indy 250. Delighted to have your company here on RaceBot TV for coverage of the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be joined in the comms booth for today's action by the one and only DJ Clark, and let's not dilly-dally around for any longer. Let's dive straight into our Next Level Racing pre-race show, because DJ, this is the one that we've been excited about. We thought back to last year, the long green flag run, and then the chaos that erupted. 4-5 wide to the line, the margin, one of the closest in series history.
Yes, indeed, Arjuna, and this track certainly produces that kind of racing across the board for these Lotus 79 machines. It is absolutely tailor-made for this car. Watch for a lot of very, very close racing, really from the drop of the green flag forward. If we get another one of those long green flag runs going on, look for a little bit of strategy to start coming into play. But there's definitely going to be a low line, there's definitely going to be a high line around here, and both may be viable options, so I think we're in for action the whole way through.
And so let's dive into our Next Level Racing Series schedule, where as we get closer to the halfway marker of the season, 2 races that saw us travel to new tracks for the first time in this series. Today it's the 6th annual running here at the Brickyard. In 3 weeks time, we'll head to the Hungara Ring for another new addition to this calendar before we dive into that second half of the campaign. But with 2 of the Triple Crown races done, we already have an idea of how the championship is shaping up, and here's a look at the Next Level Racing drivers' standings. Mike Rasmas, after missing the action at the Nashville Super Speedway, has dropped down from the championship lead. Michael O'Brien leads the points for the first time in his Retro Series career, but today is going to be pivotal because Sirwa Taylor tied for second right behind him. The margins are still infinitesimally small.
Yes, they are. And remember, we've talked a lot over the course of the season about David Sirwah's really a better running on ovals. He was known a little bit last season as a road specialist, and that Raven Lavoie Motorsports machine has absolutely come alive on the ovals this year, and I think he is going to be one to watch out for over the course of this run. Also, his teammate Alex Goyon back there in 8th place, another one to keep your eye on as well.
When I look at these names, the one thing that stands out to me is the relative lack of rookies, with only David Rodriguez, who to some would not classify as a full rookie after a part-time campaign last year. The veterans have well and truly stepped up here so far in 2022. Here's a look at your HyperX team standings, and MadWorks Motorsports are the dominant force, with Graphics LC and Raven Lavoie battling for second, with a fun fight for 4th on back, but really it's been all about the speed that Chris Fowler, Matt Taylor, and Michael O'Brien have shown. They have a almost 150-point advantage before we get to the halfway mark of the season. And I talk about the lack of rookies inside of the top 10, that's not because we don't have a strong rookie class as we talk about the ButtKicker rookie standings. David Rodriguez by far the standout name, but Jim Herrick, who won the first of our Triple Crowns at Pocono in the first week of April, is looking to do what Mark Cohn did last year and win the first 2 Triple Crown races of a calendar year.
Yes, he is, and that is going to be somebody to watch out for, I think, as remember, Herrick was able to make some good strategy play over the course of the run, and I think here at Indianapolis, if you're able to stretch your fuel out by a couple of laps, that could see you catapult your way up forward in the field. Valenzuela, Munoz, and Gilaz as well. Some drivers that we've seen have some really good runs, but get themselves into a little bit of trouble. I think if they're able to keep their nose clean here today, they may be contenders as well.
Our Backfire Motorsports trio have been ultra impressive and quietly just moving their way forward through the fields. Let's talk to you about your Gomez Sim Industry Series details in Season 6 of this Lionheart Retro Series, Year 9 of the Lionheart Racing Series. The drivers are using an open-wheel beast, the Ground Effects Lotus 79. They all share the same custom fix setup built by RaceBot's Andrew Kinsella. They are fighting for their share of cash and prizes, just over $7,000 in value. Our season champion will win a Next Level Racing GT Track cockpit, as well as a Moser Racing direct drive wheelbase and Formula Rim. Today's winner will win a ButtKicker with P2 and P3 also winning assorted goodies courtesy of our friends at HyperX. It's the second Triple Crown race of the year. Defending series champion Aaron Morgan with his part-time schedule, not defending the crown. It's allowing the opportunity for another championship contender to stake their claim for this championship, and of course Avatar Auto Racing, the triumphant trio in 2021, splintering up to now representing MadWorks Motorsports as they try to defend the lineal championship. Let's talk about your Moser Racing driver details, because I mentioned it earlier. What a race we had here 12 months ago as the Lotus 79s head to the Brickyard, the home of the greatest spectacle in racing, for the second Triple Crown race of the year. Only once has a winner emerged from outside of the top 10. For that one, you have to look a long way back in the history books, all the way back in Season 1, when Dustin Wardlow went from 18th to victory lane. And conversely, even though starting position is relatively important, pole position has never been able to take the checkered flag first. It's a race which we're expecting a few number of cautions in. We look back to last year, just 2 stretching outside of a long green flag run, an average number of lead passes in the 5 years so far of 37, and an average margin of victory, not including the one time that we had a caution end the race, just under a 1/10 of a second. The one thing that we know, DJ, is get your cameras out for what's likely to be a photo finish.
Yeah, exactly, Arjuna. It is a very, very close run here, and that really is precipitated by the high speeds around here, the ability to just tuck up behind in the draft and keep everybody nice and close. Look for about that 1.2 second mark. If you are within that gap of the driver in front of you, that's going to allow you to be able to catch it back up and use that draft to keep forward. We're going to see some good pack racing here and some good strategy play out.
Here's the look from up above in Speedway, Indiana. 4 holes of the golf course lie inside of the 2.5-mile oval. The rest of the course on the right-hand side of your screen. DJ, you've been coming here for many a year for the Indianapolis 500. You know better than many just how special this place truly is.
It is, without question, Arjuna, and I really and truly am not exaggerating here, one of the most special places in the world. I've been lucky enough to go to racetracks all around this country, and there is no place that gives you a sense of history and gravitas like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You walk into the gates here at the Brickyard, and you recognize the history and the tradition that exists here. This is really and truly a special, special race course.
And now that I've been there to experience it for myself, I can wholeheartedly agree with you. The feeling of being part of the 325,000 fans that graced the track for this year's 2022 Indianapolis 500, it was sensational. The drivers are just getting themselves through the very last stages of this practice session before they get underway for the qualifying. No 4-lap averages. We're going to make things nice and easy. Your fastest lap, your flying lap, determines the qualifying order.
Yes, it will. And this little bit of 3 wide that we're seeing there coming out of turn 2, I think that's going to be something that is not going to be uncommon over the course of the race. We're going to see a lot of side-by-side going down into the corners, especially early on. Now, if we get some of those protracted green flag periods, watch for bunches of cars to start going. This is going to be a track, I think, a little bit like running Daytona in the stock cars, where you're not going to want to pit by yourself. You're going to want to pit with those around you so as to not lose any of the draft. Running together is going to be the way to victory here.
That practice session draws to a close. The track will be locked off. Drivers will get the track to themselves for this 5-minute, 2-lap qualifying session. We talk about needing to start inside of the top 10. Today be one of those rare occasions here at Indianapolis where pole position converts to HyperX victory lane. The 30-plus drivers are getting locked and loaded. And DJ, from what you remember last year being in this very race, talk to us about the importance of track position to get underway.
Well, the track position is really going to help you get yourself forward, because the problem that exists sometimes is you'll get those battles like we talked about, running too wide across the entire track. And as that happens, it'll start to break the field up into packs, as I mentioned. And if you're in one of those trailing packs, it's very hard to work your way forward. I was stuck back down in around 20th or so place for the majority of the race last time, and it really was one of the late flag cautions and a little bit of a fuel gamble that I took that got me up into that leading pack, up into the top 10 on the last restart, and that allowed me to put myself into position to really start to be challenging forward, because once you fall back 2, 3, 4 seconds off of a pack in front of you, you're really not going to be able to work your way forward unless you get some helps from yellow.
And we talked about just 2 cautions last year, the most cautions this race has seen back in Season 2. 10 cautions. Of course, that was the year that the caution ended the race as well. We're watching Mark Cohn build up the speed as he gets ready for qualifying. Not on a full-time schedule this year, but the man that won this race 12 months ago is here for some unfinished business after missing out on a victory at Pocono. We talked about Jim Herrick's performance there. A lot of trends to be carried forward at these bigger racetracks when you think about how the drivers take a mental approach to these races.
Very much so, Arjuna, and truthfully, we talk a lot about, somebody being a road specialist here in the Lionheart Retro Series, and the truth of the matter is there is also the converse of that, which is a little bit being a super speedway specialist. It really requires a different kind of driving and a patience that exudes out through the entire race, and you'll see drivers, Mark being one of them, that is really good about just letting the car be for the middle part of the race, getting himself into position early on in the race, putting himself into that leading group, and then just letting it be, saving the car, saving his stuff for the real push on about the last 15 laps of the race.
Currently at the top of the qualifying standings, Richie Hearn with a 47.821, a tenth and a half clear of, a hundredth and a half clear of Chris Fowler in the Madworks Motorsports number 20. Of course, Richie Hearn has competed here in the real world before. Best finish came as a rookie here at Indy 1996 when he finished in 3rd on the podium. He's been displaced by first Luke Daniels and now Chris Lanini, but as always in this Lionheart Retro Series, the margins are small. A 10th splits the top 14.
Not a lot running here, and that just goes to show you that everybody's really got that 1-lap pace here down for qualifying. We watch now Mark Cohn. Let's see what he can be able to do. Maybe he's going to move his way forward. Ho, ho, ho.
And to clarify the exaggeration from both of us, when it says plus 0.000, that means the time split by a 10,000th of a second. You can match lap times in qualifying. We've seen that in the Retro Series before. Today, though, Luke Daniels, by the smallest of margins, is in front of Mark Cohn. A dead heat for pole position here today.
And that is after completing 2.5 miles around this circuit. Those drivers both absolutely pixel perfect in all 4 corners. That is a remarkable feat.
Just over 60 seconds left to go. We watch Matt Taylor, one half of a championship battle to remember at the end of 2021, provisionally down in 22nd position, works his way through turn 2 with some pressure on the line. Lap 1 over a 10th 1.2 tenths, excuse me, behind the pole position time.
And that can be a little bit expected. The second lap tends to be the money lap around here. You really need to get these cars fully up to speed because of the massive amount of speed that you are carrying around here. So watch for that time to fall down here a little bit on this second lap.
Here comes Taylor to the line. Hardin slides up to 7 in the 7 machine. Matt Taylor with a 47.831 will get up into 11th spot with qualifying drawing to a close. Luke Daniels, a best career finish in this Lionheart Retro Series of 9th, coming just a couple of weeks ago, has put it on pole position for the very first time in his Lionheart Retro Series career. Go Fast time has come to a close. We're ready to get underway for 250 miles here in the great state of Indiana. Let's not dawdle any longer. Let's run you down through today's starting grid. And in career start number 8, Luke Daniels starts number 1 here today. Mark Cohn split by the smallest of margins. The front row will be one to watch here today. Richie Hearn lines up inside of Chris Lanini on row 2, while Jim Herrick and David Rodriguez will stack up to complete the top 6 starting positions. Rolling from 7th is Ricky Hardin with Dustin Wardlow. The inaugural winner of the Indianapolis 250 here in the Lionheart Retro Series rolls from 8th. Gabe Wood, Chris Fowler complete the top 10. Matt Taylor and Jake Wright start behind them. A first time race start for Jake Wright in a long time. Let's see what he can do in that number 27 with Tyler Graf, Mike Grasmas, Jason Galvin and Cristobal Valenzuela making up the top 16. Many faces looking for some victories here. Jason Galvin, the first start of the season, has led 55 laps in his career so far to date. Rodrigo Munoz and Michael O'Brien, the championship leader from 18th spot, with Danny Roberts and David Sirois behind them. Trevor Malone, Marius Valiocas missing out on the top 20. Chris Reagan and Brian Hotham roll from behind them, while in 25th is Gary Godso in the Team Race First machine. Alex Guyon rolls alongside, 2/10 splitting the top 26. Chris Staples, Brett Accord, the final cars with lap times on the line. Luis Gonzalez, Nunez, and Adam Frazier make up the rest of the top 30, with Craig Forsyth, Hugo Gallus, George Inzaldo, and Mike Rigney through the top 34. 4 end-of-line penalties to speak of. They include Robert Mike, Adam Frazier, Will Gibson, and Craig Forsyth, explaining some of the lack of times here in today's grid. You can see the cars lined up on this historic front straightaway and getting ready to rumble for this ButtKicker Indy 250. 100 laps, 250 miles with 2 pit stops ready to get underway. And as always here in the Lionheart Racing Series, we have featured onboards to walk you through. So let's start with Ricky Hardin, who's carrying with him the ButtKicker onboard camera. Sim racing is better with ButtKicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com.
Behind him, it's going to be Chris Fowler in the Moza Racing onboard camera, redefining sim racing. Go further, go faster with Moza Racing. Visit mozaracing.com.
Lots of work for Luis Gonzalez Nunez from 29th, but he carries the SimRace 24/7 onboard camera. Visit simrace247.com, where sim racing is for everyone.
And also a lot of work to do is going to be the number 6 of George Anzaldo, who has the HyperX onboard camera. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game.
And I mentioned 2 pit stops. Fuel window anywhere from 35 to 37 laps, so maybe a little bit longer than their modern counterparts. But DJ, you and I were questioning before we went live, will we see any tire gambles here today?
You know, I really doubt that we're going to see any of that coming into play here, Arjuna. This is not a super abrasive surface on these tires, and the bias ply tires, the nature of them, I don't think you're going to see all that much wear going forward. We may see some gambles if we get a late yellow flag, maybe 15 laps to go. We could see some drivers opting to come in, try to take that pit stop then. But outside of that situation, I think the best way is just fuel only going forward.
There are some races that are bigger than championships. When you come to a venue like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, only one thing comes to mind, and that is victory. But victory here today might just prove to be pivotal, with double points on the line for Triple Crown race number 2 in your Lionheart Retro Series. This is Lionheart. Competition, commitment, excitement. We're raring to go for the ButtKicker Indy 250 with first-time pole winner Luke Daniels getting ready to get us underway. What a day we're in for of racing, and Daniels picks up the throttle. We're racing at Speedway, Indiana. Like some technical issues for Richie Hearn. As per normal, he's going to try and stay out of harm's way. One car starting from the safety of pit lane, Gary Gotzo, as he tries to stay out of any early trouble. And you can see how racy this already is. Richie Hearn down on the access road, staying out of trouble.
Yeah, he doesn't want to cause too much trouble there with those internet issues, but up front there, you can see Mark Cohn already starting to use that outside lane there a little bit. That is a very, very viable option in these Lotus 79 machines. The increased downforce, the under-tray downforce that you really get around here from the ground effects, it sucks the car into the track, and you can really get some good speed there going high.
It's a very different sort of a race to the ones that we see nowadays at Indy, when the cars very much more single file. You can't necessarily call this total pack racing, but you can see right now how stacked up they are. 32 cars split by 5.5 seconds. Looking down low, Chris Lanini tries to get past Rodriguez for third, challenges Cohn for second as well. Lanini in the black and orange machine will get up into second. Mark Cohn content to ride around up high with another race winner here in Indy stacked up behind him. Dustin Wardlow's looking forward too.
And I like that patience there out of Mark Cohn. You didn't see him going too aggressive there. He knows this is a long race, and he doesn't want to push the car too far. Luke Daniels, a little bit of weaving there on the main straightaway. That's a little bit early for that, I'd say, and maybe just a little bits of first-time pole setter nerves there for the number 28.
Looked like a bit of a moment there with one of the RSR by ButtKicker cars. They're almost 3 wide on the exit of the corner as Dustin Wardlow makes it 3 wide further up in the field. The intensity is already picking up. We're still only on lap 3 of 100 as Dustin Wardlow works his way forward. Daniels now trying to fend off the advances of Chris Lanini, who wants to lead this race, does not want to be doing any fuel saving.
No, he certainly does not, and I think at the opening stages of this race, that fuel saving is going to be out the window a little bit, but as we start to settle in more, watch for more and more cars and drivers to start thinking about those fuel numbers. If you're able to extend that stint by just a little bit, by just a lap or two, that can help you out. It's going to be less time than you have to spend in the box, and that is only going to serve to gain you time out on track.
Does seem difficult to get past the leader if he defends down low, but Dustin Wardlow goes lower on the back straightaway, 3 wide for the race lead, still working lap 4 of 100. They're going to make it work for the time being. Lanini will give plenty of space. Daniels loses the race lead. We have a new leader in the form of Dustin Wardlow, adding to the tally of laps that he's led here in the past.
Now, my real question is going to be what Luke Daniels decides to do, and there he answers it. He is not content to wait around. He is looking very, very aggressive here today as we again go 3 wide down the main straight.
Significant stat when it comes to Dustin Wardlow. I talk about the tally of laps. It's a brace. He's led 2 laps. It just happens to be the laps that counts here at the Brickyard. Wardlow looking for victory number 2 here in Speedway, Indiana. Luke Daniels looking for career victory number 1. Jason Galvin, Matt Taylor inside of the top 15 battling for 13th position. We still have this long line of cars. 32 now just split by 3.7. George Inzaldo is starting to lose touch of this leading pack.
And that's going to put him in the danger zone. You do not want to find yourself falling back off of the pace here. You need drivers to be around to be able to maintain that draft. If you lose that touch, you might as well be giving yourself a death knell going forward.
Here comes Lanini down low, still 3 wide for the lead. Lanini doesn't make it stick. Daniels will hold on for the time being. If this is how racy they're going to be early in the race, imagine, DJ, what it's going to be like when we get to the very end.
It's going to be very, very crazy, and I think we could see a situation where we had a couple of years ago where we had 3-4 coming to the line. Absolutely electric. As you see, everybody sort of fanning themselves out there, giving enough space, going down the back straightaway. I like that. That means we're not getting too aggressive here about it, and everybody's just trying to figure out what everybody's strategy is here in terms of how they want to drive.
You say they're not being too aggressive, but then you look at this queue of cars, you look at the numbers that we have right now, and how committed they are to going 2 wide through the field, 3 wide with the 44 looking in the middle to try and work his way forward. It is a jam-packed hornet's nest of activity for the time being. Will it splinter up when we get into, knock on wood, green flag pit stops, fuel window between 35 and 37 laps, and with no pit limiter, executing on pit road going to be so crucial.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing to talk about, and I think for these drivers, that's going to be what probably breaks them up. That's what happened in the last race. We had that early caution that set everything off, and then once we got into the pit stops, that helped to separate the field out into some of those micro packs that I was talking about. We saw a lot of this close racing as it went forward, and for drivers who are farther down in the field here at this point, looking at guys like Tyler Graff, Chris Reagan, David Sirwa, they're going to be a little bit frustrated because when you're running 2 wide this far back, there's really no way to be able to get a position up forward.
There are plenty of drivers making significant headway further back. Marius Valiokas in the second of the RSR by ButtKicker cars, while David Rodriguez is fighting for a podium spot. Valiokas is up 13 into the top 10, so you can chop and dive your way on forward. Trevor Malone's +9 as well. Only Richie Hearn, a double-digit loser, of course, with those internet issues, but don't discount Richie Hearn from working his way up in the later stages of this race. If we go green from here, looking at 1 hour and 14 minutes left of racing, it will be Chris Ladini that leads us to the line to complete lap number 8.
Yeah, and there you can see again Luke Daniels wanting to pop back to the inside, just trying to keep on to that lead there. I'm not sure I like the aggressive strategy from Luke Daniels. If I were in his position, I'd be a little bit more content to just hold up in line a little bit, like you're seeing frankly here out of David Rodriguez. That 4th place car right now looks very, very comfortable down on the inside. He's not pushing too far forward. Looks like he's just kind of letting the race come to him.
When it comes to Luke Daniels, a average finishing position in the 7 races so far that he's competed in of 24th. He wants something more, and maybe that's why he's a bit more willing to risk it early in this race compared to drivers behind him. They're thinking of championship implications. Mark Cohn, Chris Fowler swap around inside of the top 5. Trevor Malone gets in front of your championship leader of Michael O'Brien. Great shot across those yard of brakes. Get a sense of speed for these drivers as they work their way through these opening stages of the race. One other thing that we didn't talk about in the pre-show, DJ, is the fact that in this car, no in-car tools like we've got in the modern era of IndyCar. You've only got your 2 hands and your 2 feet.
Yes, you do, and as these cars shed weight as courtesy of using all of that fuel, the cars are going to get a little bit looser, a little bit slipperier coming through the corners. You're going to feel that start to break away a little bit as they run, and that's actually going to help some of the handling, and it's going to help some drivers really be able to harness that looseness to be able to push themselves forward, but it's also going to make the rear end of the car willing to snap around on you a little bit. Watch for the exits of turn 2 and turn 4. Those are 2 particular danger areas where that car can just kind of break away from you if you're not too careful.
This is a pretty crazy race here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but somehow it is not the craziest race that I've ever called here. I've commentated on Indy Pro 2000s, which are basically just bumping off of the rev limiter at the very top gear and bump drafting each other down the straight. We even saw bump drafting earlier this year in the iRacing Indianapolis 500 with some of the braver souls in the Dallara IR18. This car, I don't think you're going to be willing to give up anything by trying to go for the bump draft unless you're working lap 100.
I have to agree with you there, although I will say I have seen these cars actually bump draft going down the Wilson straight at Le Mans before, which is one of the most spectacular things I have ever seen, and I still don't believe that I actually saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Sounds ridiculous. That's all I have to say.
It was absolutely insane.
But ridiculous in the best type of way, the way that we love in motorsport. So Daniels continues to lead. It's been caution-free to start this race off. Still have all cars on track and pointed in the right direction. And maybe counterintuitively to how we think about this track in modern day racing. Gary Godso, after starting in pit lane, despite not having any sort of a draft, is not putting lap times that are totally off of the respectable bracket, we'll put it that way. In fact, last time around was one of the faster cars on the track, which is good for him. All he needs is one caution to be brung right back into the mix.
Yes, that is all he needs, and at this point all he can really do is just focus on keeping his car down there, pray for that caution to come out. The one detriment that he is going to have is he's not going to be able to be lifting off through these corners and saving a little bit of fuel, so watch for Godso to potentially be one of the first ones to come down pit lane if we stay clean and green to the end. The rest of these drivers in the pack. Whoa, big kerfluffle! And
the yellow has not flown. The new iRacing caution detection model can be quite judicious when it comes to when it wants to pull the caution out. Maybe the involvement of Chris Staples and Hugo Gallas, who are limping their cars back, might be enough to bring it in. There comes Gary Godso, still trying to get his way on forward, but I can confirm, at least for the time being, we stay green.
My goodness, I just saw all that smoke popping out there. A very, very terrifying incident. It looks like a couple of drivers got to get a little bit tangled, maybe getting a little bit sideways there, coming out of two. But again, that yellow not coming out quite yet.
Hasn't helped out Gary Godso, definitely has not helped out Hugo Gallas. Richie Hearn, I think, got mixed up in that one as well, and Chris Staples as the car slowed down low. Looks like Lanini's dropping backwards. Maybe this is getting a little bit too rich for him. Richie Hearn is required to tow back to pit lane. So much going on for drivers not involved in this leading pack, but again, the storyline for them is the fact that the caution has not come out, has not changed the game. Let's take a look at the RaceSpot TV replay. Just looks like a chain reaction. Two cars going tumbling over and over.
That is exactly what can happen when you are bunched up like this. I'm not sure if that was a checkup from in front that really caused that. Maybe a driver trying to lift a little bit, getting too much speed coming out of turn two. But one way or another here, we'll take another look at it as they run. Yeah, and I think that's what it was. Drivers just not really anticipating a checkup in front of them, as you can really get a good run there out of two. But if you're not careful, you've got to back yourself off a little bit to make sure you don't run into the cars in front of you.
I believe it was Hugo Gallas that had the checkup that actually led to the initial contact and then just went on a chain reaction from there that no driver could control. Luke Daniels leads, David Rodriguez carving his way now up into the inside groove. One car back from your leader. That's where Rodriguez will want to be. We know he can be a prodigious fuel saver as we switch over to lap 16 of the race, halfway through almost this initial fuel run.
Yep, and these drivers have no signs of stopping this 2x2 momentum that they have going right now. This is a little bit contrary to what we saw last year. There was a little bit more single file running, as I think at this point, with two lanes being firmly established, the setup here by Andrew Kinsella really allowing for this multi-wide action to take place. And, you know, we haven't seen a lot of kerfluffles here up front, everybody being relatively clean as they go, so why stop it? Why try to get into a one-lane running if this is the way it can work?
It's close racing, but unlike Motegi last year where it ended in tears or drivers pushing the limits too far, to some degree it looks like they are restraining themselves, at least for the time being, as they work towards a green flag pit stop cycle, a thought that might terrify some, intrigue and excite others. Left side again, you can see those movers and shakers, plenty of drivers up double-digit positions as they work their way up through the field. Other drivers starting to slide their way down. Dustin Wardlow trying to make the outside line work on the run into turn 3.
Oh, he's trying to definitely keep it up there, but what he really needs to get that to go is to be able to tuck up behind your leader of Luke Daniels, get a big, healthy dose of the slingshot of the draft coming down the main straightaway, then to the outside and carry that overspeed around up onto the high line. Running 2x2 like this, he's never going to be able to really get that pass done.
Maybe try an up and under on the exit of turn 2. Both cars sliding down and up the track respectively into a crash course with one another, but they avoid it. They survive for the time being, still working. A green flag run to start this race off. 33 took to the green, 30 are left out there on the track. Hugo Gallas, Richie Hearn, Chris Staples all look to be retirements from this, the 6th annual running of the ButtKicker Indy 250. Ricky Hardin, Mark Cohn side by side inside of the top 6 as cars that qualified well try and conserve some track position. Gabe Wood, Jim Herrick as well battling, and what a story it would be for Jim Herrick, who's 3 wide at the time, if he could make this his 2nd career victory, of course, coming after that dramatic win at Pocono.
Well, we talked about it, we sort of hinted at it a little bit more in the broadcast, Arjuna, but certainly some of these drivers just come alive on these super speedways. It's a different kind of running. It's not like running Nashville where you've got to be doing a lot of lifting and that kind of stuff to keep yourself around the corners. The lifting coming around here is really to block your own momentum from running into the cars in front of you, and it's all about feeling out that timing. And so that could be a run there, little bit of a close move there in the back as they almost went 3 wide, but we'll have to see as some of these drivers just come alive on super speedways like this.
Oh, some contact with one of the remaining Backfire Motorsports cars. Would assume that it was Cristobal Valenzuela, maybe with Chris Lanini, who got shuffled all the way back in the running order to 23rd as he's hung up on the outside groove for the time being. We approach the 20% marker of this race, still battling for the lead, almost 3 wide. Rodriguez electing not to slide his way down low, as looks like a very damaged machine rolling off a pit road. That's Hugo Gallas. Yeah, that car is still probably not good enough to go racing, let's be honest.
Yeah, that one is not going to be quick enough, and I'm pretty sure that the stewards are very quickly going to tell him to park that as not meeting minimum speed requirements.
So one of the trio that is Backfire Motorsports will be out of the race, but Hugo Gallas at least showing some determination to try and get the car back out there and rolling. Wardlow Daniels still side by side for the lead as Daniels pushes up through turn 1. Rodriguez Fowler side by side for 2nd with Conan Hardin behind them. Wood Herrick side by side, Valiocas Malone. This is very much a choo-choo train. The next place this stops, green flag pit stops in about 15 laps time. From the driver's perspective, DJ, what's going through their minds at this point? How has the car's behavior changed as they burn through half of the tank?
At this point, you're going to start to feel that rear end start to slide a little bit, specifically on corner entry. You're going to feel it start to dance a little bit, and then as you come onto the throttle a little bit more, coming out of the corners, you're going to feel that dance as well. Now, for drivers on the outside lane there, that's going to be a little bit more concerning. You're a little bit closer to the wall, but you're not making as aggressive moves onto the steering wheel, so you've got a little bit more room to be able to drive it. Drivers down the inside, they're worried about washing up as they run, and as that turn-in gets a little bit harder to manage, they've got to keep an eye on those rumble strips coming down into 2 and 4. We've seen many drivers just barely clip those and send them into a slide, so they are just having to be absolutely pixel perfect with their entries. We really haven't seen any problems there going into that area yet, but you can see how drivers are starting to back off of that low line, not dipping 2 tires down under the white line out of 4. That tells me that these cars are getting a little bit more unpredictable as they run.
Hugo Gallas has been forced to return to the safety of pit lane. Will that be our confirmed 3rd retiree? We'll keep you updated. Let's have a look at that moment, by the way, for Cristobal Valenzuela as they ran out of turn 4. He's down low, Lanini's up high. Matt Taylor's got a great view of this. It's just Lanini drifting down low, maybe Valenzuela going up high, and that was as close to disaster as you would want to be getting.
Yes, it is, and just good heads up there, I think, from those 2 drivers. We can see here from the popcorn position just a wee bit of a touch, and when you're running that close to one another, you're so used to hearing the spotter in your ear telling you car outside, car inside as you run around that sometimes it just gets to be a little bit of background noise, and you think you're a little bit smarter than the spotter and say, no, I'm clear by him, and that seems to be a little bit what I think happened there.
The iRacing spotter is great, but sometimes you just can't trust it, especially when you're in a pro Ford truck off-road racing, short course style racing, and you're 5 wide, which is what we had last night on the iRacing Esports Network for coverage of the 2022 iRacing Off-Road Championship Series. It is by far the best pro series that I've seen on iRacing. I highly encourage you to join us before Lionheart on a Wednesday evening, live on the iRacing Esports Network. Daniels in control this time, though, through the short shoot of turn 3 and 4. It's Rodriguez, Wardlow back and fourth for second for the time being. It's an old sight. We're not used to seeing racing like this at Indianapolis. You can see Daniels is so clear. He's gone up high. I wonder if, going back to what you were saying, DJ, the tire's starting to feel the pain a little bit more, if the outside line is going to be becoming the preferred groove in short order.
It very well could, and remember that running that low line like we talked about, what that does is that just, you have to put more steering input onto it, and so that means that your tires have to be a little bit more of aggressive angle going into the corners, and that causes them to scrub a little bit more, wear a little bit more. When you're on the high line, you're able to arc into the corner a little bit more and reduce some of that scrubbing. So that high line, you're not going to be wearing the tires as much. Now, here at Indianapolis, because this is such a absolutely flawlessly smooth track, you're not going to be having any necessarily problems like we saw at Nashville, for example, like that concrete surface. But just anything you can do to preserve any bit of it is going to be helpful.
We did talk about Matt Taylor being back there in the thick of the action. He is dropped backwards by choice, I would assume. Down 12 from where he qualified. Other drivers that have dropped back include Jason Galvin, Mike Razmas, even David Sewell. We've seen, of course, Lanini and Richie Hearn try that as well. Not working out so well, unfortunately, for Richie Hearn, who qualified up inside of those top 3 starting spots. A quarter of the race is now in the books, and I continue to knock on wood, caution-free so far today. Still winding ourselves up for that first cycle of green flag pit stops. 33 is down to 30 with one car out of the train at the back end of the shot. That's George Anzaldo. Of course, Gary Godso, after starting on pit road, also not in this leading train, at least for the time being. He's waiting for that caution to fly to bring him back into the mix of the action here as they wind themselves up and out of turn number 2. And when you think 2.5 miles, you think, oh, okay, yeah, that's big. It's not until you get to the speedway that you truly get a sense of the scale of this track, DJ, going under on your way into the infield, or even sitting outside the corner seeing the cars fly past you. It's a very different experience compared to watching these cars rumble around at what seems like a rather, I don't want to say pedestrian pace, but safe pace, at least from what we've seen so far today.
Yeah, very much so, Arjuna. It is one of my favorite things in the world to take folks who have never been to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. My seats for years have been right about there, right about up the exit of turn 1, and to get there you got to walk all the way down the front stretch there, and it really gives you that sense of scale. I mean, when you see the cars come by at full tilt for the first time, and then you see them again in about 30 seconds or so, it really serves to show everybody just how quickly these cars are moving. And obviously these Lotus 79s out here not generating the speeds that we're used to seeing today, the 220s, 230s out of modern Indy cars, but they're still tickling about 195 entering into the corners. So this is by no means a pedestrian pace, and it really goes to show you just how much hustle you can get here at Indianapolis.
We haven't really talked about conditions either. Just so far today it's relatively warm, not compared to this past month of May warm, but it is still blistering in the air. 80 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take, 117 down on the track. It's the wind that will be the bigger concern, because if it moves around very slightly, if it strengthens, weakens in those gusts that tend to fly across the track, will change the balance of the vehicle as you work your way through the most treacherous part of this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Daniels and Wardlow still going at it back and forth. They're too wide basically through the entire field.
Yeah, too wide, too deep, just all the way on back through here, and I think that's going to maybe present some problems in about 4 or 5 laps time when we start to see drivers having to peel off down pit lane. With everybody running as close as they are, you're going to see the field have to sort of check up to allow some of those drivers to get down pit lane, and I think what that's going to do is that's going to start to break up the field a little bit, and the drivers who are going to be able to get in there at full commitment, that is going to help them out and maybe keep them ahead into the leading group of the different groups that we see break themselves up when we anticipate pit stops.
And to that point, I wonder if now you start thinking early about getting down in line with still maybe 5, 6, 7 laps to go until we enter that pit stop window. Do you compromise a little bit with your line in this pack right now to get down low and try and save yourself a little bit of time as we work our way lap by lap into that green flag cycle of pit stops? Mark Cohn, defending race winner, still third in line on the inside as they rumble down into turn one once more. Daniels leads, led the majority of this race so far. It's a long way to go though. The pressure on his shoulders must be feeling like it's the weight of the world, at least for the time being. And counterintuitively, I thought about cars wanting to go up down low. There's a car that looks to want to go up high as they fight their way in through the midst of the top 10. Looks like Jim Herrick, not sure which line he wants to take.
Yeah, not sure there, but I believe I just heard a call out over the radio there, Arjuna, that Luke Daniels, unsurprisingly, is going to be coming down pit lane. That is not a surprise. He has been the driver that has been out front using the most fuel, and so there he comes. He is going to be the first one to peel off.
Not too bad on the run into pit lane. The yellow cones where you have to be under the speed limit, ready to roar your way, or these speeds, maybe a whimper, down onto pit road. Trevor Malone in the 34, up and down, looks to find the right line with Michael O'Brien behind him. You can see they've all started to migrate down low. Dustin Wardlow leads the pack now as they come into turn number 3.
And it sounds like Wardlow, who spent most of the time there up front on that high line, he's going to be coming in. I'm hearing Luis Gonzalez-Nunez as well, so plenty of drivers opting to make that pit stop here. And this is the part of the race where you're looking at drivers like Rodriguez, like Harden, like Cone, who have been able to just hold up in line and not have that much aggression trying to work their way forward. They're going to be able to go a couple of extra laps here, and that is going to help them.
George Anzaldo from the back of the line as well will come down to pit road. It's Rodriguez that's leading from Fowler and Harden behind him. Gabe Wood, Mark Cone, 4th and 5th in queue right now. 33 laps on the board. The fuel window looks to be a little bit tighter than the information that we were gathering in the build-up to this race. I wonder if they're just attacking a little bit more than they expected to in the build-up to this one. Wood around the outside will get in front of the RSR by ButtKicker. David Rodriguez, number 10, who comes down to pit road this time by. Will anyone be hung out to dry?
Looks like we've got a couple of drivers opting to peel off there, and more coming in. Oh! Contact into the wall!
Forsyth, who had an end-of-line penalty. Well, it goes from bad to worse here today. That was a big old smack as he tried to get it locked down and under the pit lane limit. Unfortunately, snap left and straight into the wall.
And that is so easy to do here, Arjuna. You are traveling at absolute breakneck speeds around this track. Your brakes are very, very cool, and it is very easy to lock up the fronts and the rears coming down pit lane. You have got to absolutely be practicing that and practicing that and practicing that over the course of the week.
Practicing it on low fuel, worn tires as well. Difficult combination. Reagan leads on lap 34 as here comes the big old train, but we've got a huge crash, and out of turn 4, the caution flies for the first time today. About 8 cars get mixed up in that one, including Matt Taylor, and I believe Jim Herrick's machine, the 4D Sim Racing car, stricken on the entry to pit lane.
Now, the big question here is going to be is if any of these drivers are going to be falling afoul of iRacing's rules. When the caution is immediately thrown, the pit lane is closed, and if any of them were previous to that commitment cone, they will be receiving a penalty.
How quickly things change as we ratchet down the tempo under caution for the first time today, with potentially race-ending implications if anyone fell foul of our race control rules. See if we can pick up what happened to some of these cars then as we grab a look at these RaceSpot TV replays. So out of turn 4, there's the 4D sim racing machine of Jim Herrick. In fact, behind him is the main wreck, and Jim Herrick just gets squeezed, and I think that misunderstanding about whether drivers were going to be allowed to enter pit lane safely started to creep into the driver's mind. Jim Herrick gets squeezed out. Behind him, one of the Backfire Motorsports cars causes that chain reaction, but you just see there Jim Herrick and, crucially, the championship leader, Michael O'Brien, contact with one another.
Oh, that is not what you want to see at all if you are any of these leaders. We watched Valenzuela here. Looks like he was trying to maybe get down onto that pit lane, into that pit line, and just gave a little bit too much of a squeeze, and that's what caused the Backfire Motorsports driver to run out wide. Yeah, there you can see it, just trying to get down a little bit. trying to fight his way down, not running that higher line that we've seen as we go into that super slow motion, tries to get down, a little bit of a squeeze, and unfortunately, I think a little bit of a net code on that as well.
And then you see Matt Taylor collected via one of the Raven Lavoie Motorsports machines as they tried to get down under some sort of minimum speed that would get them through, but that is dramatic. That might very well have changed the complexion of the race. Who's up there in contention? We work lap 36 of 100. First caution of the day. Chris Fowler, your new race leader. Rodrigo Munoz for Backfire Motorsports runs in second.
Yeah, indeed. And so that is really going to change the order. Look at who is up in third place right now. I had been following Chris Lanini's progress. Remember, he was the driver that fell back through the field, sort of opting to fall back, it looked like. And Lanini now, as courtesy of all of that, finds himself up into third place.
How quickly things can change. We were wondering how it was going to work, how the strategy call to drop back will work. For some, it's worked out nicely. For someone like Matt Taylor, for someone like Michael O'Brien, it has not fared out so favorably for them. For them, the MadWorks Motorsports duo, only Chris Fowler left in that trio. He leads the race for the time being as we slow it down. We get ready to pick it up again. For these drivers, what does that first caution mean to them? How does it calm them down? Maybe even get them more excited, more anxious about what's left in front of them?
Well, I think it's going to do a little bit of both here. I think what it's going to do is that it's going to make a little bit more impetus for drivers to try to fight their way up through the field, specifically looking at the drivers that were really in good position coming into that pit stop sequence, looking at guys like David Rodriguez, Mark Cohn, Mike Rasmus, that now find themselves sort of mired in the mid-pack. We may see a little bit of aggression out of them as they try to push their way forward, but what are the new leaders going to be doing here? Luke Daniels still able to get himself in third. I think this is a little bit of a saving grace here for our pole sitter. I was very worried that he was going to fall well down the order, as we also see a couple of drivers here, I think very intelligently coming down and topping off on fuel. If you're sitting back farther in the field, Lanini just did it, but if you are, let's say, Jake Wright, Brian Hotham, Matt Taylor, come on down, get a splash and dash, try to extend as much as possible. The only detriment that you're going to have is you're going to be able to run a little bit longer on this next stint.
Well, let's quickly highlight this man who's coming down into pit road with no front clip on that Lotus 79. He is our Moser Racing driver profile. It is the current championship leader, Michael O'Brien. 25 starts after debuting in our season opener in 2021. Has consistently racked up good points finishes. 7 poles, shows the quickness, the pace, the raw potential that he's got. But 4 second place finishes, all coming on road courses. O'Brien continues to search for that elusive race victory.
Yeah, he has just been so close to it a couple of times here, and I really think that it is just a matter of time until he is able to be able to crack that duck, beat that duck, get the duck off of his shoulders, whatever analogy you want to use there. I'm mixing metaphors, but it is just a matter of time for him, as we have seen so much speed, and it's really, frankly, just been bad luck that's befallen him up to this point.
Maybe 3 weeks from now at the Hungaro ring, he can get the monkey off his back, but it's his teammate Chris Fowler that will get us back underway for the ButtKicker Indy 250. Single file restart will stretch them out initially, but they'll bunch up very quickly and build the pack up to where it was before. Chris Fowler leads from Rodrigo Munoz, Luke Daniels, and Dustin Wardlow. So 1 and 2 prior to the caution, still up there in race-winning contention. But plenty of drivers, including the likes of George Anzaldo, have taken full advantage to be at the front. Here comes Rodrigo Munoz trying to lead his very first lap in Lionheart Retro Series competition.
And he's going to dive that car up up to the inside, and Munoz is going to have the move. A good run there for him. Fowler a little bit hung out to dry up on the high side, and this is starting to be a little bit more of what we saw last year. Brave drivers holding it out on the high side, but mostly everybody sticking down to the low side. A big gaggle there that you can see in the back as we're really starting to have two different packs form itself up here, Arjuna.
It's 12th and 13th that have splintered themselves separate. Tyler Graff in front of Gabe Wood to the tune of 1.9 seconds. Some big names involved in that second pack, including the likes of David Sirwa, even Chris Reagan, who's led laps here today. Valiokas, who made up some impressive ground in that first into the race. Valenzuela peels back down onto pit road. 33 has become 26 by virtue of our first caution in today's race. Of course, Gallas, Hearn, Staples mixed up in an incident through turn 2. No caution flew for that. Valenzuela, Jim Herrick, and Craig Forsyth, along with Michael O'Brien, all victims of that second incident here today. David Rodriguez lost a lot of ground as well, as Jake Wright will come into pit road. Plenty of cars feeling the pain from that incident that took out a number of contenders.
Yeah, and there's still some drivers that are out on track right now sporting a little bit of damage. David Sirwa in particular that I am noticing as one of them. But up front, we're starting to see a little bit more of what we saw in that first stint. A little bit of too wide running here, as it looks like there that's Dustin Wardlow being the one trying to figure out which lane he wants to run in. Looks like he's going to settle on coming up high.
And now the gap up to 13th on back. 3 full seconds as they fight hammer and tong, tooth and nail for the time being, but they've got to start working together to close up to this gaggle in front of them as we near the halfway marker of this race. Working lap 41 of 100 at this ButtKicker Indy 250. Hardin leads the peloton, battling side by side though with the RSR by ButtKicker number 23 of Marius Valiokas. They've got to get in line, they've got to get coordinated sooner rather than later. Daniels hits the front once more. He's looking uber comfortable here today.
Yeah, he certainly is, Arjuna, and I've got to give him credit. I was a little bit skeptical of that number 28, holding on to that aggressive low line and really wanting to lead for so long in that opening stint, but he has proved here in this second stint that he is not only able to lead, but able to get himself back into the lead, and I'm interested in the fact right there that going down the main straightaway, he didn't opt to come down and cut down low, leaving that line open to Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That tells me that he's feeling out the car a little bit more, and he's feeling comfortable anywhere on the track. And with the speed in that number 28 machine, that would make me very scared if I was one of his competitors.
4 laps down, but still trying to fix that race car. Michael O'Brien with a true championship mentality. Back down onto pit lane to try and get that car up to some sort of workable speed. We saw Hugo Gallas try to do that, did not work out for him. Looks like the same fate has fallen on Cristobal Valenzuela. That battle in that second group is almost 3 wide as they exit off of turn 4. Gap now rising to 3.5 seconds. What can these guys do, DJ, to close up to those in front?
Well, they can do a couple of things. One of the things they can do is start playing a little bit of leapfrog, using that as a way to get themselves up forward, but really and truly with 3 seconds, they've got to be hoping for a yellow. And I was watching this group at the start of the last restart, and really and truly what got them farther back in the field, unfortunately, is one of the drivers that we talked about in the beginning of the race, David Sirwa. He's got some damage on the front wing of that car, and that car looks to be about 5 miles an hour off pace. He was leading that group, and he was a little bit of a bottleneck for everybody, and that is what pushed them all back there. As you see now, that gap really not moving around all that much as they go.
Danny Roberts inside of the Backfire Motorsports car slides forward to third as Nunez continues to try and rip away the race lead from Luke Daniels. Let's cycle back to the green flag cycle of pit stops and take a look at this pit entry from Craig Forsyth and talk about the difficulties of getting down to speed here. You're not using the brakes very much. You've trimmed out for maximum top end speed as well. Craig Forsyth, the first driver to make an absolute mash of that pit entry.
Well, and if you see there, that was really precipitated by those cars up in front of him. He was on a perfect trajectory to slow himself down by the cones, and I believe that was Fowler right in front of him. Having that car right up in front of him like that, he had to brake a little bit more than he was anticipating, and that was just enough to lock that left rear tire and to spin him off into the wall.
After his end-of-line penalty, Craig Forsyth that had a quiet day to open out this race. Go no further. And the first caution, of the night. O'Brien still tinkering and toiling away to get that car up to some sort of racing speed. Daniels has slid backward now, outside of the podium spots. Nunez, Wardlow fighting for the lead with Danny Roberts in the inside of the Candy Man as they battle now for second spot. Gap has started to close ever so slightly. It was down below 3 seconds for a moment. It's 2.8 now.
Yes, it is. So maybe we're seeing that second pack starting to learn a little bit as they go. And we're starting to see here a lot of these drivers looking more and more comfortable in the way the cars are moving. You saw there Luis Gonzalez Nunez really sliding that car across the short chute between 1 and 2. Now looking pretty aggressive there on Danny Roberts. He's starting to feel that car out a little bit more.
Yeah, Roberts and Nunez are being a little bit more cutthroat than I would have thought before we even got to the halfway marker of the race. Wardlow goes around the outside as Nunez will migrate up to be behind him. Roberts holds on for now, will slide up the track and chop the nose off of Dustin Wardlow. Battle for the lead involves 10, 11, 12 cars for the time being. Tyler Groff just about hanging on to those very last stages of the draft. Coming to the inside is Luke Daniels, who wants to force the issue on Danny Roberts. Going to be pinched down low. Danny Roberts not making friends. 47 laps complete here today.
No, as they continue on 3 wide through the corner, and it looks like Dustin Wardlow choosing discretion is the better part of valor, backing out of that. And Arjuna, we talked about that sort of movement mid-corner there, in particular from Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That is really a result of these cars getting lighter, the tires getting worn in more. They're not nearly as understeery in the mid-corner, and you're able to get that much more movement, and you're able to play with the car a little bit more.
Right on board from the rear of Danny Roberts and see the run that Luis Gonzalez Nunez will build as they run themselves over the yard of bricks. But even with that head of steam, even with the momentum on the run to turn 1, inside line is reigning supreme as the track gets a little bit darker. Cloud has covered the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The balance of the car changing all the time. Gap now between this leading group and those behind down to 2.3. They have gotten their act together.
Yeah, they certainly have, and Luis Gonzalez Nunez able to get the move done there to be able to take the lead. That was very, very heads up. He backed off a little bit coming through turn 2, got just a little bit of a lick of the draft coming out of the corner, and was able to use that to slingshot his way up forward. And Danny Roberts being very, very heads up, backing off a little bit and letting that number 14 on by. That is some good heads up two-car racing.
Looks like Michael O'Brien has called it time. 33, 26 cars left running from the 33 that took the green initially. O'Brien, Valenzuela, Herrick, Forsyth, Gallagher, Hearn, Staples, the retiree in this ButtKicker Indy 250. Round 8 of your 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. Gonzalez Nunez will give the lead up potentially to Danny Roberts with the momentum around the outside on the run into turn 3. We're seeing the outside line start to get stronger. Nunez tries to fight back.
Yeah, and you were right there about that, Arjuna. The more rubber gets laid down on that high line over the course of the race, it will become more and more quick. I remember running into the last part of the race where we got that late caution. I was able to get a couple of really nice moves around the outside off of the restart, and watch for that to be an effective strategy. Whoo, getting a little bit close, almost 3 wide there up for the lead. Nunez really ducking down to the low side.
Still making it work, but the margins are getting smaller. Nunez is running up slightly higher, not trying to risk it down low on the curb. Roberts trying to pinch him off. All the while, the gap back to the chasing pack continues to go back and forth. Now up, though, to 2.8 seconds. You're watching RaceSpot TV and ESTV for coverage of the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. We're in Speedway, Indiana for Round 8, the ButtKicker Indy 250. Luis Gonzalez looks to make it 6 race winners in 6 different years. The second half of the race coming up next on RaceSpot TV.
With the ButtKicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. ButtKicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. We've made our pilgrimage to the Speedway for Round 8, the ButtKicker Indianapolis 250. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be joined by DJ Clark for today's 100-lap affair. And well, through the commercial break, the second caution has flown. And DJ, you and I thought the big one was coming. That was the big one.
Yes, it was multiple cars taken out from that leading pack. A little bit of touch coming down into turn one and just a little bit of a spin, and that is enough to send, as we said, multiple cars up into the catch fence. Lots of damage here inflicted on this field.
Let's grab a look at the RaceSpot TV replay and pick apart the big old crash that we had through the short chute. Hellacious up into the catch fencing, several cars. I think about 4, 5, maybe even 6 went for all sorts of rides. Ricky Harden a bit of collateral damage as he tries to navigate his way through the smoke. So it was 3 wide on the run into turn 1. That was only going to end in disaster, but somewhat controversially or counterintuitively to what we usually see, the car on the outside gets through fine. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, his rear view mirrors filled with smoke.
Yeah, and you could see there Danny Roberts as he came in mid-corner. That car started to break away from him a little bit. Just watch the slip angle coming through turn 1 as he just loses a little bit of the car and has to catch it coming down to the inside. There you can see it start to break. He tries to catch it, gets down to the inside. That is enough to make contact. All of those drivers there, absolutely nowhere to go in the back. Cars tumbling and vaulting overhead. And at this point, you've got to be a little bit thankful if you're in that second pack that you were able to slow down enough to avoid all of that.
Well, and we'll keep watching here as... Who's that in the 40 sim racing? Luke Daniels probably goes for a bit of a subsequent ride. Ricky Harding gets clipped very slightly. We'll grab a couple more looks at this one as we cycle our way through because, well, there aren't many cars that are left undamaged anymore. Daniels, Roberts, Munoz, Guyon, and Zaldo. I think Guyon's the one that gets launched up into the catch fencing initially. Munoz is the one that goes cycling down the track. Danny Roberts is the one in the yellow and black that got clipped there. They don't get much bigger than that one.
No, they really don't, especially here at Indianapolis. And so that is really going to change everything up in the complexion of this field with the caution being thrown about halfway. Because now, Arjuna, we've got some alternate fuel strategy being put into play. The majority of the drivers from that second group that we were watching opting to not come down into the pits.
I do say never trust the commentator's math, but I'm going to wonder and gamble that DJ Clark has got the strategy figured out today. DJ, what are you doing if you're behind the wheel with 45 left to go at the line?
I'm on a little bit of the boat here of thinking that staying out here may be a good call. We saw about 33, 34 laps being able to be done the last time out. That's going to get me roughly another 15 laps of green flag running. Now, if you came down pit lane this time, you're still going to have to do another stop by the time this race is over. And I think what these guys up front can do is they can do some pretty major fuel saving around here, and I believe they can make it on one more stop. I think everybody's got one more stop to do, and try to get yourself a little bit of track position, not putting yourself into the position of getting caught back in that backpack like we saw these guys have. That's the way to go.
Well, you always talk about it as well. When the car burns the fuel off as it gets lighter, it becomes a rocket ship. So get yourself into that rocket ship mode now and see if you can pull an advantage through that final cycle of pit stop. Rear wing of Jason Galvin's car does not look structurally sound. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Let's see if we can pick it up here. Just about. Look at the left side of the wing. It's crumpled in as it goes over to the right.
Yeah, it's not the biggest damage that we've seen, but just that little kink on the rear wing, that's going to cost him in a straight line. That's going to affect the aero balance of the car, and so we're going to have to watch for that 42. We may see him falling down the field a little bit more as he runs. I'm not sure what that straight line speed's going to be like, and I'm not entirely sure where he picked up that damage. May have been running with it for the majority of the race.
We'll have to wait and see if we can figure that one out. The lights are off on the pace car, so we're going to get back to racing this time by. But let's break out the RaceBot yellow pen tool as we go super slow-mo to just point that out for you so you can't miss what we're seeing. Just look right here, the red pen tool, at least for today. It's not in its factory condition. Probably the best way to describe this one. Well, the big one has claimed its number of victims, 33 in the blink of an eye, now is 22, many of them involved in that hellacious incident on the exit of turn number 2. But it's Chris Fowler at the front of the field with Galvin Cohn behind him, and Jason Galvin is looking down low, maybe trying to stay out of trouble's way as the pace car gets ready to pull itself off and get us back underway for the ButtKicker Indy 250. It's the MadWorks Motorsports number 20 that brings us to the green. We're underway in Speedway, Indiana. Less of a hold from the race leader and a bit more of a chaotic start. No big splintering up of the remaining cars that we've got, but they build the head of steam, they build the momentum. We wind ourselves into the final cycle of this race.
Yes, we do, and crucially there, a little bit of a gap that started to develop between Marius Valiokas and Gabe Wood. Wood trying to hold on to that a little bit as there's 2 by 2 there in the back of that leading pack, so it doesn't look like that trailing pack's going to lose too much time. A little bit of a down here at the inside. That's going to be Tyler Groff trying to see what he can do.
And where did he come from? One of those cars that was biding their time, minding their business. Tyler Groff in the 98 will slide to the race lead. Valiokas tries to bully Fowler out of the way for second spot.
And Fowler's just going to hold on there to the high side, not looking too aggressive. He's not looking to cut down. I think he just wants to let this run out. He'd like to maybe be able to slot back up into line, find a position to be able to go, but it looks like that high line's going to carry momentum through the corner, and he's going to bring Gabe Wood along with him.
Tyler Groff with momentum on his side after a second place finish at Nashville last time out. This, though, a very different sort of a challenge, and he's got to defend for 40-plus laps as there's the momentum from behind. 2 teammates working that inside groove. Valiokas and Rodriguez will be communicating with one another. On the high line, Fowler and Gabe Wood trying to defend as well and not lose too much ground. It's Groff that controls the tempo at the front of the field.
Let's not forget, having David Rodriguez into a position like this where fuel strategy is going to be king is not what this field wants to see. I mean, none of us can forget that run in Iowa last year where he magically pulled a couple of gallons out of the tank. I think for him here, he is going to be perfectly content to stay behind his teammates, sip fuel, and try to extend this stint as long as possible and maybe take a little bit less fuel when he finally has to make that final stop.
Here's a look on board with Jason Galvin. We were postulating about whether he'd be down on speed. It does seem like he is, but it's an RSR by ButtKicker 1 and 2, crossing the line to get to lap 60 of 100. Rodriguez leads the way from his teammate Valiokas, Fowler and Graf behind, and with teammates blocking both lines, they'll be able to control the runs from those behind.
All right, so that tells me right here, Arjuna, that they are not worried about fuel conservation. They are thinking they're going to be able to make this work as they run. And so by, as you said, blocking these two lanes, this is going to secure this RSR by ButtKicker team to be able to hold on to that. Nobody's really going to be able to get a run on by them. I like this team strategy here out of Rodriguez and Valiokas.
Remember the chaos that we've had at the conclusions of these races in the years past. The average margin of victory, less than a tenth of a second. You look back 12 months ago, couldn't split it by more than 5 thousandths of a second. One of the closest finishes in series histories. It was the third closest finish. Can we beat the 2,000ths of a second that saw Rhino to steal the victory at Michigan back in Season 3 from David Clymer? We'll find out. The teammates working lap 22 and 27 of their stints respectively. We aren't far away from seeing Valiokas back down to pit road as there's a checkup on the short chute on the run through turn 3 and 4. Valiokas a little bit loose, slides back in the pack.
And that's a little bit surprising there, Arjuna. Turn 3 as they go is a relatively easy order to take. You normally see mistakes really going into turn 4 and going into turn 2. I'm not entirely sure what happened there to him, but he just had to catch the car a little bit, and that drove him further up onto the short chute, compromised his entry into 4, but he has done a fantastic job here to be able to regain that traction and get himself back into securely second place.
Is this what he wants though on strategy? Due to come down and pit shortly, a little bit quicker than his teammate who leads the way for the time being. Maybe explains the call from Rodriguez to be punching the hole in the air rather than being the recipient of that draft for the time being. 30 minutes or so left to go in this race. The gap that was forming between 11th and 12th has stabilized at 1.4 seconds. Ricky Harding leading the peloton as they try to get their way back into race-winning contention.
Yeah, we're going to have plenty of drivers hoping to be able to bring their way forward. And as you said, this peloton running in single-file order, I think that is the way to go. Harding right now, the one that is up front, he's going to want to be doing some trading right now with Chris Lanini potentially to try to leapfrog their way back up into the front of this field. The other thing that we have to keep in mind with them is that is the group that took their pit stop. So they've got heavier tanks of fuel. They are going to be slower.
Pit Ryder through turn 4 as they fan themselves out almost 3 wide. Coming back onto this main straightaway, Gabe Wood is lurking, part of the pit crew for JD Motorsports in the NASCAR series. Where is he going to find a way on through? Michael O'Brien giving us the word in our YouTube chat there. DJ, they are taking tires here today. Is someone going to gamble? Have we already seen someone gamble? Is that why the 23 is so loose at this stage of the run?
Well, it certainly is a gamble to take those tires to change it out. The question is when drivers were going to be taking tires. Is my predictions there of a no-tire strategy coming a little bit too naught. At this point, the thing that I have to worry about is if you haven't taken your tires, it does take a little bit to get them up into that operating window. And so if you're planning on taking tires here at this final stint, that could really see you lose time on the first couple of laps out of the box and find you further back down in the field.
It is 11 cars that are in the lead group at this point. Here at the Speedway in Indiana, it is still the RSR by ButtKicker duo that leads at the front. Rodriguez, even though he's up in the top 10 in the championship, I think it's fair to say to some degree that he's not electrified the same way that he did last year with 2 victories through his season. His best finish so far this season came at Pocono, where he finished at least on the podium steps. Valiokas, we think back to Watkins Glen when we think of him. Another driver that came into this one thought as a road course ace, put it on pole, and then made the crucial misjudgment on pit lane to speed. From there, it just got worse.
Yeah, and it can just compound over the course of the season, Arjuna. If you have a bad race like that where, frankly, there's really nobody to blame but yourself, it can just build that sort of mental traction in your head, bringing you back down. You think about those mistakes. You're fighting a little bit too hard over the course of the next couple of races to redeem yourself for it. And when you're fighting like that, when your blood is up, that's actually going to cause you to race worse. And so just a little bit rough go of the season there for him. Maybe the reset here for Marius is exactly what he needs.
And I don't mean to throw you totally under the bus, DJ, but of course, your 2021 Lionheart Retro Series campaign couldn't have started on a better note, on the podium at our season opener. From there, I think it's fair to say that you did not get any sort of luck thrown in your direction.
No, I certainly did not, and I had some good runs on the ovals and a couple of decent runs on the road courses, but it really and truly was one of those things that I made a couple of mistakes, specifically with Watkins Glen, just goosed the car a little bit coming up and over the bridge, lost it coming out of turn 9, and every time I got onto a road course, I thought about trying to redeem myself for that, and I pushed the car too much, and it can just compound over the course of the season like that, and that's exactly what happened to me.
Sometimes it's the way it goes when you get into a new championship. You've got to get the lay of the land, figure out where you are in the pecking order. Sometimes it's not to your approval. We will leave it at that. Valiocus, Rodriguez still hammer and tongs side by side, working with one another to maintain the dominance that they have right now. Valiocus probably due down to pit road in 2, 3, at most, I'd guess 4 laps from now. Would be good to make it to the end. We'll have to see what happens in terms of tire calls, because when you pit here, DJ, at the very least, you expect to stay on the lead lap.
Yes, you do. 2.5 miles, certainly long enough to be able to get that going. Looking back through the rest of the field, what's going to be interesting here is the fact that Rodriguez, I think, made a little bit of a splash and dash on that first yellow, and so he's only been out for 29 laps here at this point, so he'll be able to extend the lead a little bit. Now, the question is going to be is if he wants to, because he may not want to come in by himself. He may want to pit with his teammate to not lose that draft around here.
George Anzaldo still trying to fix his car, but meanwhile the dominance at the front has been interrupted by the arrival of the 04 of Gabe Wood. This time though, on the run through the back straightaway, hung out to dry, no draft, no assistance from behind. Can Valiocas get back to second?
Well, we'll have to see. He's opting to just tuck in behind his teammate here, getting a little bit of clean air going through the corner. That's going to allow him to go a little bit more flat out, not have to lift nearly as much, just getting that dose of clean air onto the right front wing of the car. Now he's going to tuck up behind his teammate here and see how they go. Gabe Wood a little bit left out to dry. We're going to have to see if he can hang this out on the outside.
Still hanging on strong, and Luis Gonzalez Nunez sees that and tries to make his own charge around the outside at the tail end of this pack. He's side by side with Matt Taylor as they battle for 10th for the time being at the front of the field, still waiting to see if Gabe Wood can hold on. A little bit more speed on the exit of the corners, but this time through turn 2, he concedes. This time at the line, 30 laps to go.
30 laps to go, and crucially, I just heard a call over the radio that a couple of the drivers opting to come down pit lane. Looks like Rodriguez, Valiocas, and Gabe Wood. So all 3 of your leaders going to be coming down pit lane. Now, remember what happened last time we saw this sort of thing erupt. They've got to be careful to judge their braking point off of each other. Looks like they were all able to get down nice and easy.
Couldn't have gotten much closer, but it does look as though all 3 have avoided any sort of iRacing penalty for speeding on pit lane. With these cars not having pit limiters, it is easier said than done to get them down to speed. And even once you've gotten into your box, you still have to work your way up to speed. As up on the jacks, Gabe Wood will go. Does not look as though Rodriguez is going to be taking tires. This final stop comes to a close. This is a time to make sure you execute properly. Gabe Wood will roll at the tail end of this train. Valiocas and Rodriguez tucked up against with one another.
Now remember what I said about taking tires on this last stint. Those tires are going to take a little bit to wear in for Gabe Wood. That could hurt him a little bit as a whole gaggle there of that first pack coming on down pit lane.
That looked a little bit more sketchy as you've got about 8-9 cars all peeling their way down. Mark Cohn at the front of the train with Graf Galvin alongside him. Reagan will be one of the first to slide his way into the box as they all focus on executing on pit road. Rodriguez, Wood, and Valiokas building up the speed. The rest of the cars on pit road know what the target is.
And now the flip-flop's going to happen here. Those drivers who opted to come down pit lane during that last yellow flag, they're able to run out here and run their tanks to dry, but they can probably only make it up until, I'm going to say, about 5 laps to go. They're going to need to come down before the end here, Arjuna.
Undercut hasn't worked too significantly. Mark Cohn will come out of the pit access road and get straight into the toe of the RSR by ButtKicker duo. Conversely, Gabe Wood has lost ground in that cycle of pit stops. 3 wide for the lead. Cohn still getting up to speed, but RSR by ButtKicker hit the front once more.
And that is the exact execution that you want to see if you are those two teammates. So great news for them. And crucially, if we do get another yellow, just as we sort of hinted at before, none of the drivers that came down find themselves a full lap down. So if a yellow were to come out, it's going to equalize a lot of things.
Still 9 cars yet to come down to pit road. Luis Gonzalez Nunez leads them. The drivers hoping for a caution to potentially bring them back into the mix with Rasmus, Hardin, Lanini, Malone, Sirwa, Rigny, Godso, Wardlow. Those 9 cars. With these machines, they're just trying to hope that their final pit stop is as short as feasibly possible. We'll track the lap times, see how well this pack of cars works together compared to those yet to box.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting little playback as we're about to go 3 wide down into turn 4. That is Mark Cohn, the watchman, not taking no for an answer. He wants to break up this RSR by ButtKicker duo.
He wants to add to the 4 wins he's got already. Will think about taking Rodriguez to the wall. Rodriguez sees the look down low and backs out of it. Side by side for the net race lead, at least what we believe. It's 5 cars fighting hammer and tongs. Galvin followed by Jake Wright, 2 drivers making their first start of the season. And for Jake Wright, it's a long-awaited return to Lionheart competition. What a return it would be to make his way into HyperX victory lane.
And at Indianapolis, no less. That is exactly what you dream about when you talk about coming in for a one-off like this around this historic speedway. We now ride on board with the nose of Wright and watch him here, just doing the right things there, keeping the car nice and steady as he runs, picking up some clean air through the mid-corner. I like the patience there from Jake.
You can see behind they're not being so patient. Chris Reagan taking it 3 wide behind Chris Fowler. Now Reagan will slide in front of Brett Accord. You can see there's some urgency from this gaggle of cars, 2.6 back from that gap of the grouping of cars that we've seen fighting in front of them. These are the cars that have already worked their way down onto pit road through today's racing action. 2 cars have broken away from those yet to box. Gonzalez, Nunez, and Mike Rasmus trying to run away and get the sails out, but last time by reeled in to the tune of 1/10 of a second.
Yeah, and that's not what they want to see, especially, though, the one thing that's going to be helpful is the fact that the trailing pack here that has already come down pit lane, they're fighting. They are duking it out with each other, and that's going to be costing them just a little bit of time. And that could be good news for Luis Gonzalez Nunez and Mike Rasmus, but we're not really going to know that until about, let's call it 10 to 12 laps time when we anticipate that fuel window closing for the drivers that came down during the last yellow.
How long can they wait? How far can they go? That's the question on the minds of the 9 drivers who owe us a pit stop to round out this round 8 of the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. Jason Galvin hanging on with the damage to his rear wing as well. Does not seem to be slowing him down at all as he fights in this leading group of cars.
Yeah, I've got to give credit to Jason. I thought for sure that he was going to be really, really suffering here, but being able to tuck up behind in the draft, it looks like that car is not only handling well, but he's not having any straight line speed deficit, and he is certainly being able to keep it out as Gonzalez Nunez comes down pit lane.
By himself, will he emerge near the cars that have already boxed He's been running lighter on fuel. Will that be the saving grace for him? Leaves Razmas by himself at the front, no draft assistance, and falling backwards into the clutches of Ricky Hardin and company. We watch the cars that have already come down pit road. Where do they emerge? Luis Gonzalez Nunez already finished his pit stop several seconds quicker than these cars.
And that is a result of not needing as much fuel. There is Nunez getting up to speed on pit exit. Now, because of the high speeds around here in Indianapolis, it's going to take him a hot minute to be able to get everything up and to go. There you can see that leading pack coming through turn 1 right now. This is going to be pretty close, Arjuna.
I think Nunez has it. He's going to be controlling the lead of the race. The net lead of those cars already having come down pit road. It's not even close. 2.5 seconds the gap.
Wow, that is remarkable there from Luis. Massive, massive credit there to him. And he is going to be up front. Now, his one problem that he's going to have to deal with is if these guys start to play fair with each other and do a little bit of leapfrog to get themselves up forward, he may find himself a sitting duck. But right now, he has got everything clean and green in front of him.
Nunez was a little bit off cycle compared to those yet to box. Surely, though, if you're one of these cars, you've seen when Nunez has come out, you know the lap times that you've got to hit now to try and ensure you're in front of that gaggle of cars that has been fighting back and forth after cycling out of pit road. As we watch them, Jason Galvin trying to work his way forward. That second group with Chris Fowler and Gabe Wood, for example, not really able to close. In fact, losing almost 3/10 last time by.
Yeah, I think they were just fighting with each other a little bit too much. And to the point about that leading group right now, remember, they're running on a lighter fuel load here, and that means those cars are going to be faster. So they may even be able to see themselves springboard up ahead of Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That's what they're going to be hoping for, to be able to run these tanks absolutely bone dry.
We love some good strategy to shake things up. 20 laps to go, this time at the Yard of Bricks. Mike Razmas looking to make it 6 winners in 6 different years. The only drivers with a chance to be repeat winners. Dustin Wardlow at the tail end of this group of cars yet to box. Mark Cohen in that second group of cars having already pitted. Our defending race winner. Which direction are we going? If you're curious about lap records in the series, 46.533 is our race lap record, 193.411 miles per hour. Today, though, lap time's just over 47 seconds, so we are a little bit slower. It's not to say we're slow by any means.
No, these drivers are absolutely wheeling it around here, tickling 200 miles an hour in the draft. It is very, very fast as they run. And there we take a look back on that trailing pack right now. Galvin trying to make a big move down to the inside.
The more they fight, the more they lose. Nunez still about 2 seconds clear of this group behind him. He'll be watching the rearview mirrors, watching the timing to make sure they're not closing out of draft range for the time being, although last time a 1/10.5 gained by those behind on Luis Gonzalez Nunez. 3 wide again on the run into turn 1. Galvin can't commit down low. The RSR by ButtKicker machines controlling this field once again.
Yes, they are, and that was some pretty heads-up driving there from Galvin. I thought for a second he was going to really stick it in. Ooh, little bit of a lower run off of the corner there for the number 10 of Rodriguez. Didn't look like it hurt him that much, but that is not the line you want to be running out of the corner. There is a bump there on the low side entering into turn 2. That's actually what caught Jimmy Johnson out earlier this year. You've got to be careful about that if you are too aggressive on the entrance to 2. That little bump around there can throw you off.
Valiocus running very high through the corners, as behind them one of the divided by 0 machines. I think that was Brian Hotham or Brett Accord, one of them getting very close to slamming into the wall. They're pushing the limits further and further as we wind our way towards the closing stages of this race. The cars yet to pit, working towards lap 30 of the stint, may be looking at 7 or 8 laps longer before they're down on pit road.
Yeah, and that's going to be helped out a little bit by the fact that they were running under yellow for a couple of laps. That will help them out. And now you can see them all running in single file order here, not wanting to be too aggressive. That to me tells me, Arjuna, they're thinking a little bit about fuel conservation.
Maybe trying to minimize the time on pit road, maybe trying to get an extra lap out of the tank, given how powerful the undercut seems to be. Razmas leads the way with now Hardin, Lanini, Malone, Sirra tucked up behind him, enjoying the benefit of the draft. Rounding out of turn 4, 16 to go this time by Gonzalez Nunez, still keeping that gap up behind him, 2 full seconds.
Yeah, it's a really impressive run here from Luis. I kind of thought he was going to be a little bit of a sitting duck, but that pack behind him really has no intentions of not battling in and among themselves, and I think that's to their detriment on catching up on that number 14.
Time is running out for the second Triple Crown race of the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. The next Triple Crown race, the one that decides it all, the race for the championship at Auto Club midway through December. There's a long road to get there, not even at the halfway marker of this 2022 campaign. But races at Indianapolis often mean more than the championship itself. Just ask Marconi, experienced the thrill of victory 12 months ago. They're fighting now at the front of the field. Ricky Hardin takes the point.
Yes, he does, over Rasmus and Lanini, and they are working on lap 31 of their stint right now, which tells me that, as we talked about a little bit earlier, 4, maybe 3 laps to go here, depending on how well they're saving fuel. I wonder if we're going to see that Motor Racing machine, the number 68, poke his nose out. Does it look like he is? They're going to stay in line.
Do remember that Razmas, while enjoying some draft from Gonzalez Nunez, has been at the front of these groups longer than those behind. He might be the first to blink and roll down onto pit lane, but only time will tell. Behind them, Rodriguez, Valiocas, the RSR by ButtKicker teammates continue to swap back and forth. The gap to Nunez officially, though, under 2 seconds as they start to work together to try and reel on in that number 14 team. SimRace247.com machine, 3 wide still, Galvin down low.
And Jason Galvin, despite that rear wing damage, looking like he is having absolutely no problem muscling his way up to the front of that field. He has had enough sticking behind those 2 RSR by ButtKicker cars, and he is now going to be on the loud pedal down the main straightaway and across the yard of bricks.
Inaugural race winner here at Indy, Dustin Wardlow down on pit road, 3 wide at the yard of bricks. Jason Galvin backs out of that one, unable to work his way forward. You can tell it's getting more feisty. More cars on the way down to pit road. Ricky Hardin, Trevor Malone for the final time today.
And that's going to be that pit stop that we talked about there for them. This is going to be very, very interesting to see where they will come out, not only in regard to Marius Valiocas, David Rodriguez, and Jason Galvin, but to your presumptive race leader, Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That is going to be the battle off the pit lane that I am watching.
So there they come. Now where is Gonzalez Nunez in comparison? Getting up to speed on the exit of turn number 4. Now, is it going to be enough to get in front of Ricky Hardin and Trevor Malone, who are just building the speed up out of pit lane? Nunez might be alongside. The gap will exist, though, to that pack behind.
Yes, it will, as here they come out of turn 2. Does Nunez have enough to be able to clear them on by? There you see it. I think Nunez is going to find himself losing out there, and yes, indeed, he is, to the tune of about 1.6 seconds. That's out of draft range.
And now the rest of the cars down to pit lane. Razmas, Lanini, Siwa, Rigney. This is the money stop. This is the time to execute for race winning honors. Watching Hardin and Malone up to speed and into turn 1, clear of those behind them. Race off a pit road. David Siron might have some damage to his front wing, but he comes out in second. They roll off a pit road and should be in front of those 2 behind.
I think they will as they get those cars up to speed, using the ground effects to be able to handle through that non-banked entry there. But crucially, as they come back up to speed, it looks like at full tilt there that Ricky Harden and Trevor Malone are going to be within draft range, but they may not have a lot to say for Mike Rasmus, who's been able to get a 1.3 second advantage.
Lanini straight in front of David Siwa in that Raven by Lavoie Motorsports car. Look at the right front of the wing, significantly damaged. How has he been holding on so far today? To the line, 11 laps to go. It's looking like Mike Rasmus has got a drive to victory that he's just got to survive and pray that the caution does not fly. They're 3 wide behind. This is where the danger might be.
Yes, it is. This is looking particularly sketchy here. I think now the drivers realize they don't really have a chance to go for the win. That's taken off some of the gloves here, and they are just absolutely duking it out.
Closing behind is Chris Fowler and company. The gap is coming down bit by bit. They are slowly bringing themselves forward to Luis Gonzalez Nunez, but not quick enough, and crucially 2.3 further up to Trevor Malone, Ricky Harden, and that battle for second that's trying to battle to close to Mike Rasmus in the 68 that leads the way across the yard of bricks with 10 laps, 25 miles left to go in the second Triple Crown race of 2022.
And Arjuna, that is a blink of an eye here around Indianapolis when you look at it, but I guarantee you this is about to be the longest 10 laps of Mike Rasmus's racing career as he just tries to hold on to that over 1 second gap.
One person that wants things to change is Michael O'Brien, the championship leader coming into this race. Will finish down in 27th. We'll see Rasmus potentially take his 3rd win of the calendar year in what has been an impressive start to this campaign for that 68 machine that leads the way here in Speedway, Indiana. We still watch, though, the Hornet's Nest, where Jake Wright is looking around the outside and trying to find a way forward. That group battling for second, not closing, but looking to pick up the tempo.
Yeah, they're trying to see if they can maybe play a little bit of leapfrog here, but I don't know how well that's going to come into play when we've got drivers here that are really fighting for podium positions. They're going to be 2 wide. They are coming through the corner, and they're going to keep it going as we ride on board with Trevor Malone.
Great view of that, but the side-by-side has led to the gap growing to 1.4 seconds. Closing laps of the race. Rasmus hoping that these drivers will be his best friend and fight for all they are worth to the depth of this race. This time at the line, 8 to survive for Mike Rasmus. Point of no return, likely around 4 laps to go.
And that's true, Arjuna, as there they come. Noah's Ark across the start-finish line. There, Harden, Lanini, Malone, and Siwa trying to see if there is going to be any way for them to work themselves forward. Now, one strategy here that they are employing, you actually can get a little bit of a side draft out of these cars. That may be what they're trying to do to gain up ahead, but it doesn't look like it's working as that gap's expanded up to about 1.4 seconds now.
Looks like single file is fastest right now, and if you're Lanini Harden, do you give up this fight for second with the chance to try and close, or do you keep going at it and risk letting Rasmus run away and a caution not let you be brought back in to fight for the victory of one of the most important races of 2022 in the Lionheart Retro Series? Jason Galvin at the front of this group of cars that boxed earliest of them all. Damage to the rear wing does not seem to be hindering him. Jake Wright down low to take it 3 wide on the run into turn 1.
And you saw there Jason Galvin, I think, just feathering the throttle a little bit coming into the corner. He did not want to take that 3 wide. He wants to see that car through to the end of the race.
Survival, but for drivers like Wright and Galvin, one-off appearances, you can risk it a little bit more at this point, although you don't want to be the one taking out drivers fighting for a championship, costing them valuable points. Galvin's the one with a send this time on the run into turn 3. Gap for the lead down to 1.3. Harden trying to get the group into single file formation to try and close, but time is running out. The laps are ticking away.
And I love seeing the sort of ingenuity here out of this second group. You've seen them try to do multiple things. As again, we're going to go 3 wide down into the corner. And again, Galvin going to back out of it.
This is looking like, if you knock on wood, if you're a Mike Rasmus fan, we are looking for the first winning margin over a full second. Average margin of victory coming into this race under a tenth of a second, the largest back in Season 1 when Dustin Wardlow won by a gargantuan 0.2 of a second. 1.3, still the gap for the lead. Galvin down low holds on to 7th spot.
Yeah, he's going to hold on to it, and what I think he's trying to do is maybe game out to the end of the race, position himself to be able to make that move going down the backstretch and hold the position coming out of turn 4. But what I was saying here about this trailing pack right now is they are trying multiple things. We saw them try to go too wide. We saw them try to play a little bit of leapfrog, and now we're just trying to see them stay in a straight line to see if that's the way to get forward.
Brian Hotham, Gabe Wood, Brett Accord, all fighting now for 13th spot. For someone like Gabe Wood, was looking like he had the speed. Somewhat frustrated, I'm sure, with how the strategy has cycled itself out, but still has to fight for every point that is on the line. It's as simple as that, no matter where you are in the stacked lineup of Lotus 79s. Mark Cohn joins the front of the cap now, along with Jake Wright, two part-time drivers in front of the RSR by ButtKicker machines. Won't be pleasing them, that is for sure. This time at the line, 4 to go. Gap has grown to 1.4.
And that is music to the ears of Mike Rasmus. It just doesn't look like this trailing group is going to be able to close down here with 4 laps to go unless Rasmus makes some kind of error.
Rasmus led the championship midway through 2021. His form fell away. It allowed Matt Taylor and Aaron Morgan to be the championship protagonists heading into that final race of 2021. This year, he's been a man on a mission. The only driver not named Matt Taylor to have won multiple times. He went back-to-back at Phillip Island and then our trip to Brands Hatch several weeks later. This, though, is the victory of all victories. With 3 laps to go, the group behind is closing once more.
Yes, they are. The gap coming down a little bit with only 3 laps to go. Is that gap going to be able to close in enough time for them to be able to get a little bit of the draft? Realistically here, Arjuna, they only need to close in about 0.3 of a second, and then they're going to find themselves sucked up behind that number 68. But the question is can they get that 0.3?
Passing is one thing, catching is one thing, passing is another. To quote the great Murray Walker, that is what these drivers are having to think about right now. With just over 5 miles to go, is there enough time to catch, let alone pass? It doesn't seem like it's turning out in that direction. While the battle for second stagnates, albeit slightly, the battle for 7th continues to be the place where all the action is as they work themselves to the line. 3 wide again, 5 miles to go.
5 miles to go as we go down into turn 1, a little bit side by side there. Noah's Ark now down through the corner. I believe that is Mark Cohn starting to get a little bit interested. No, excuse me, that's Jake Wright starting to get a little bit interested as they run.
Valiokas again, very, very wobbly. We talked about it so far today. That car looking a little bit looser than others. 4 wide down the back straightaway in the battle for 7th. You'd think it's the battle for the lead. Jason Galvin knows how important a win at Indy is. It's not trending in that direction. 1 lap to go. Mike Rasmus still 1.1 clear of those behind.
He's got 1 second as he crosses over the yard of bricks. I've got to think here, if I'm Rasmus, I am thankful that that white flag is in the air. The gap now coming down to 0.9 of a second.
They're closing, but not close enough. And with time running out of turn 2 for the final time, Mike Rasmus sees victory in front of him. It's Indianapolis. It's time to build the snake. The 68 back and forth, weaving down the back straightaway. Through turn 3 for the final time. The gap is still 0.7 of a second. The speed is trending in the direction of those behind, but time, distance, expiring for the battle for the lead. What has been a fascinating ButtKicker Indy 250 will see Mike Rasmus win career race number 7. He's done it on the ovals, he's done it on the road courses, but there's a photo finish for second while Mike Rasmus wins his very first Triple Crown event.
Oh, and a big accident coming across the line there in the back. Mark Cohn looking like he was connected, and it cars tumbling down the start-finish line.
It's not the first time we've seen that at the end of the race. It's not the last time that we'll see it either, but it's all about the focus on the number 68 of Mike Rasmus. The gap came down to 3.5 of a second. Chris Lanini stole second from Ricky Hardin and Trevor Malone, but it's Mike Rasmus, a winner, celebrating in HyperX Victory Lane.
Absolutely incredible run there for Rasmus. I was starting to wonder there coming out of those final corners if he maybe ran out of fuel the way he was really losing time to the rest of that field. But one way or the other, he had just enough to cross over the line, and an incredible run here for the 68.
Chris Lanini will celebrate as well on the podium here at the 2022 ButtKicker Indy 250. The plaudits go to Mike Rasmus, who burns it down in Victory Lane. A winner at Gateway in Season 4, 3 wins last year, Sonoma, Silverstone, and the season-ending race at Fontana before this year. 2 wins on the road courses have led Mike Rasmus to this historic victory in Speedway, Indiana. What a race and what a spectacle we had today. What else did you expect when it came to a race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Let's run you through your SimRace 24/7 race result. Mike Rasmus leads a Graphics LC Motorsports 1 and 2 with Chris Lanini right behind him. Ricky Harden will drop to the 3rd step of the podium. Trevor Malone, David Siwa, the rest of the top 5. While for Luis Gonzalez, Nunez, no man's land in the last 20 laps of the race, will be delighted with a 6th place finish for Team SimRace 24/7. The RSR by ButtKicker duo of Rodriguez and Valiocas able to hold off in that gaggle with Galvin and Wright, making up the rest of the top 10 on their returns to the series. Mark Cohn, Mike Rigney, Brian Hotham, Matt Taylor, and Chris Reagan through the top 15, with Mark Cohn ending this race up in the air. Gabe Wood in 16th with Gary Godso after starting in pit lane, surviving to get into 17th. Brett Accord, Dustin Wardlow, Tyler Graff make up the top 20, all getting to the end of this race. Chris Fowler scored 1 lap down with George Anzaldo, one of many retirees today, the most striking of which are the likes of Luke Daniels, Danny Roberts, and Michael O'Brien. Daniels, pole position for the first time, led the large chunk of the early stages involved in a big old incident, while Michael O'Brien, the points leader, will look back on this one with some regret. Christopher Valenzuela and our previous Triple Crown winner in Jim Herrick, 28th and 29th, with Craig Forsyth making an error on pit entry that retired him from the race, with Hugo Gallows, Richie Hearn, Chris Staples, and Adam Frazier, the rest of the 34 cars that started today for this ButtKicker Indy 250. And with that, we welcome you to your HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. Now let's not dawdle any longer, let's go straight down to HyperX Victory Lane, where we're joined by a jubilant Mike Rasmus, victorious for the 3rd time in 2022. Mike, you've won in all sorts of races. It doesn't get much bigger, much better than a win here at Indianapolis.
No, this is unbelievable. I'm over the moon about this, the way this race worked out. I didn't know how it was going to go. Just like all these oval races, you just the fuel strategy way you think you can, try to be there at the end, and I thought, oh, I'll be, top 10 maybe, and then here I am pretty much by myself at the front at the end, and I've done a lot of races at this track in this car, some in Lionheart and some elsewhere, and, it's super hard to win here, and I just can't believe I kind of cruised a little bit to the end there, and just super happy about it.
Qualifying didn't go that well if you were in the heart of the pack. How crazy was it? We saw about 2 wide, 14 rows deep through the field in those early stages.
Yeah, I attached myself to Matt Taylor. I figured, if I stick with him, I'll be there at the end because he tends to play the long game really well. And, we basically both of us stayed on the inside, saved fuel, and went to the back. And we were almost dead last there, coming to the, first yellow or pit stops or whatever. But yeah, just try to avoid getting into any unnecessary issues too early on. That's the best strategy for me. I mean, it's not exciting. It's kind of boring just sitting there. But, I like to try to make it to the end of these races.
Well, after missing Nashville, you weren't the points leader coming into today's race, but you should be heading out of Indy. How are you feeling about this first half of the season? We still got 1 track to go before the halfway marker, but it does seem as though, given how last year ended, you've picked up this season with a real intensity to win this championship.
Yeah, I'm happy to be up at the front. There's definitely more fast guys this year, drivers in general, and like I didn't think I'd have this many wins on my tally. So I'm grateful for those wins, and hopefully we'll keep the momentum going and follow through the end of the season.
Get a bit of a break now to enjoy this victory. We'll see you in 3 weeks' time from the Hungaroring. Congratulations, Mike Rasmus, a historic victory here today.
Thanks, bud.
And back-to-back for Graphics LC Motorsports after Mark Cohn's victory 12 months ago. And in a 1-2 for Graphics LC Motorsports, we step on over to Chris Lanini, who enjoyed some victory donuts of his own to celebrate the team's success. And Chris, we saw you go back through the field in that opening run after being up there in the front. Were you a little bit sketched out by what you were seeing?
Yes, I was. Short answer. I just wanted to. The other thing was I was burning a lot of fuel being up there running in fourth for second on the high side. So I noticed my fuel numbers and everything and decided I needed to drop back and save fuel and maybe get out of the craziness for a little bit.
In terms of working together as a team, how easy was that? Because we did see through the field the ability to communicate, give draft to one another was important. How much were you guys in Graphics LC Motorsports communicating through the team?
Oh, quite a bit. We worked together really well as a team. We actually ended up split on the fuel strategy. That's why I ended up pitting so much later than them. I topped off on I think it was the last caution. So that's actually, we saw which one ended up working, so that was neat. But it's really easy with everything we have set up to communicate with your team, to know where we are on track, stuff like that. So we work really well together, so it's an awesome team.
So we take a trip to Hungary next time out, our third new track to this 2022 schedule, and as one of the relative veterans of the series, how have you been enjoying the new challenges that you've had to get up to speed with?
It's been fun. It's been fun. I'm not the greatest, I'll admit, at the road courses in these cars, but I'm getting better. They're fun to drive, even if you're not too great at them. I still don't own the Hungary track, so I should buy that.
You've got some time at the very least, so you can enjoy this team victory. You can enjoy the result for yourself as well. Congratulations, Chris Lanini, second in this ButtKicker Indy 250.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great day for Graphics LC Motorsports, even with Mark Cohn's flip to the line. Let's bring in the final step of the podium. Let's bring in Ricky Harden as part of the Raven Motorsport Silver team. Ricky pipped at the line to get into second. Indy never disappoints, does it?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's always nerve-wracking to do these races, but honestly, this is the most tame one that I've been a part of since I've been in the Lionheart Retro Series, so that's saying something.
Yeah, you weren't 5 wide at the line. I was disappointed.
Yeah, well, happy that we didn't get taken out at the line this year. It seems like that's an every year occurrence right at the end of these things. But man, I was just really surprised that we couldn't close the gap on Mike. I think I had a little bit of underbody damage that was affecting me from the previous crash where the 09 just launched me through the air. I didn't have any damage in the pits, but I think when we landed, it just wrinkled it a little. And I wish that I wasn't leading that pack. I should have just pulled out of the way, but it is what it is.
Did seem like a lot of cars got damaged, and you know, from your perspective, you say you've been in these sort of races so many times. What was different about today than some of the other ones? Because we did have good green flag runs today, but none as lengthy as the one that we had last year that really defined the way that race played out.
Well, the setup was a lot more packy. It was more of a pack race type of feeling. It was really hard to get away from each other. It was really easy to get really good runs. You know, the tire wear this year has been a factor everywhere, and it wasn't as big of a factor today. It was a little tight for about 10 or 15 laps, and then it was fine. I felt that taking tires on every stop was safe, because if you got out by yourself, it could get a little loose. But then the way it went green to the end there, it wasn't a factor anyway, because we weren't in one of those giant packs.
Some good momentum on your side, Ricky, after the third at Nashville. We'll see you from the Hungaroring to get to the halfway mark of this season.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Ricky Harden, final podium winner. And always good to talk to our drivers post-race. We thank them for joining us as part of our HyperX post-race show. But DJ, it's now time to look forward. Our third new race of 2022. We head to one of the most historic tracks in the world. Even though it's only been open since about 1985 or so, the Hungaroring has become a staple of modern-day Formula One and many other series that elect to fly their way to this tight and twisty track.
Yes, it most certainly is, Arjuna, and I think in these Lotus 79s, it is going to be a real treat to watch them drive through. We've got some good high-speed corners really in that first sector, and then I think we're really going to separate out the field once we get up on top of the hill through that very twisty second sector of the lap. Remember that there's a lot of curbing up there, and these cars do not like to take curbing well, as it will upset the ground effects on the car, so it's going to be very, very tricky to thread the needle through there. But one way or the other, I think we're going to see some great racing, some great passing through that first sector, and I am altogether excited about it.
And crucially, you mentioned the different type of corners that we're going to have at this facility. There's slower speed, the opening corner, for example, all the way on the anchors down to pedestrian sort of speeds. Then you've got the faster sweeping corners that define the end of the lap. It's going to be about, again, adaptability and making sure you are comfortable over the course of a full fuel run. Before we say goodbye as well, let's run you down through this next level racing schedule as we get closer and closer to the halfway marker of the season. 2 Triple Crown races are done, some new tracks to go to, including of course the trip to Montreal as well as the Motegi Grand Prix circuit, but we've got some of the classics coming up in American open wheel racing.
Yes, we do. Looking specifically ahead at the start of that second part of the season, Iowa, Michigan, and Long Beach, 3 staples on the American Open wheel schedule. Very, very much looking forward to all 3 of those.
And all roads lead to Fontana, to the Auto Club Speedway for our double points finale, where again, as a Triple Crown race, the stakes are elevated that much further. But now, as we prepare to bid you farewell, we would like to thank those that make all of this possible, starting with Next Level Racing, the title sponsor of the 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com.
It's also sponsored by ButtKicker. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. ButtKicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and lets you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before.
Moser Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Moser Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane.
Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com.
And it's not just them, but so many more that make this all possible. To learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series or the 3 competitions the sanctioning body puts on, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com for more information. And don't forget to check out Lionheart on social media to stay up to date with the latest news from within the virtual paddock. Eyes remain focused on Speedway Indiana. The Lionheart IndyCar Series has already had its fun for its 500 miles in the HyperX Indianapolis 500. Today, the Lotus 79's got the ButtKicker Indy 250 in the rear view mirror. On the 9th of July, a Saturday special presentation on RaceSpot TV. It's time for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing and the Dallara DW12s to have their fun for the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. That race and every race live on RaceSpot TV, but join us at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific for that special presentation as we finish off our spectacles of races at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The next time the Retro Series is underway is the 21st of July. It's time for the drivers to decompress. It's time for the drivers to recharge when we get underway next time for the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of the Hungaroring, presented by SimRace 24/7. More history written today though. 6 races at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and 6 different winners. On behalf of the team at RaceBot TV, we're delighted to have had your company here on a Thursday evening for this 2022 Lionheart Retro Series. Alongside with DJ Clark, my name is Arjuna Kankipati, bidding you farewell tonight, where Mike Rasmas continued to write his name into the Lionheart Retro Series history books. A winner of a Triple Crown race, champion of the 2022 ButtKicker Indy 250. We'll see you next time on RaceBot TV.